Hey everyone, welcome back to The Explainer. Today we are diving into something that is, honestly, incredibly frustrating, deeply personal, and just universally misunderstood. Have you ever looked back at your dating history and suddenly realized you are basically dating the exact same person over and over again? It's utterly exhausting, right? Well, I want to validate that experience for you right out of the gate. You are absolutely not alone, and today we're going to use the visuals in front of us to break down exactly why this happens, and more importantly, how you can finally break free.
Different name, different face, same ending. Honestly, you've probably broken up with the exact same type of person 3 times, haven't you? When this happens, it kind of feels like you're cursed, or like you literally just have a permanently broken radar for love.
Just take a look at these 3 silhouettes side by side. On the surface, they look like entirely separate relationships. But as that red outline traces around all 3 of them, we see a pretty uncomfortable truth. They actually share one identical underlying shape.
So what does this all mean? Why exactly does your brain do this? Well, I want to reframe this for you right now. This is not a personal failure. It is definitely not bad luck. What we are actually looking at is essentially a neurological glitch, a psychological mystery that we are about to solve together.
Over the next few minutes of this explainer, we're going to look really closely at the mechanics behind this. We're going to unpack exactly why your brain keeps building this identical relationship over and over, and we're going to highlight the exact moment you can catch it before it runs away from you again.
To see how this all builds, notice that arrow pointing backward in time to that small house. That represents your childhood. Whatever is running the show in your adult dating life, well, it was installed long before you ever said hello to any of your exes. Also, keep an eye on that faint circular loop in the corner. That's the pattern, and it's going to be absolutely crucial as we go on.
Okay, let's dive into this. Psychologists actually have a specific formal name for this phenomenon: repetition compulsion. Basically, it's the unconscious psychological drive to repeat emotional patterns that were established in early, unchosen relationships.
Notice how this pattern transfers directly into adulthood. If you follow the dotted line traveling from the parent-child pair inside that childhood house straight forward in time to a new adult pair, you see the pattern just transfers directly. And here is the really uncomfortable part. Your brain isn't actually built to find you someone who's good for you.
Instead, your brain is built to find you someone who feels familiar. And familiar gets defined very early on. Maybe your early environment was calm and steady. Or maybe, actually scratch that, maybe it was anxious and unpredictable. Either way, whatever emotional weather felt normal back then, your nervous system quietly filed it away in a little folder labeled home.
Now, understanding the origin completely explains why it happens, but as we see here with that big red question mark sitting on top of our growing loop, it doesn't explain why it is so incredibly hard to stop. Even once you know the pattern exists, and even when you can literally see it coming from a mile away, it is remarkably difficult to pull the brakes.
Let's think about how this actually plays out in real life. Say someone meets a new person. They're warm at first, but maybe a little inconsistent, hot and cold. Most people would call that a massive red flag. But if hot and cold is the exact emotional weather you grew up in, your body doesn't read it as danger. It reads it as familiar. It literally reads it as electricity. We end up mistaking anxiety for chemistry.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what's happening. Notice the heart overlapping with that jagged crack line? For this person, anxiety and attraction have always arrived totally fused together. So they lean in harder. They literally mistake the anxiety for attraction. 3 months later, they're in the exact same relationship again, just wearing a different name. And the wildest part, it never felt like a repeat. Every single time, it felt brand new.
But here is the part that people really don't want to hear. Notice how our loop is now fully closed, drawn in stark red. This isn't just happening to you. Some part of you is actively choosing it. Not consciously, obviously. Not on purpose. But you're choosing it all the same.
Your brain isn't searching for a good relationship, it is searching for a recognizable one. Just let that sink in for a second.
Which brings us to our core reveal: familiarity bias in attachment. This is the actual name of the glitch in our system.
Your brain will relentlessly trade good for familiar every single time, unless you actively intervene and teach it a completely new definition of home. Look at those small icons of past relationship types around the outside. They are all feeding directly into that exact same red loop from totally different angles. It all leads back to one shape. But here's the empowering part. Once you see this pattern named and drawn out right in front of you, you cannot unsee it in your own life.
So the crucial question is, how do we break out of it? Here is the massive cognitive reframe you need to take away from this explainer today. The next time you feel an instant, intense pull towards someone, I want you to completely change the question you ask yourself. Don't ask, do I like this? Instead, ask yourself, do I recognize this?
Look at this fork in the road right here. This is exactly where you take control. If the honest answer is that it feels like home because it's calm, steady, and safe, like that smooth wave line on the left, that is a healthy pull. But if it feels like home because it's anxious, uncertain, or just a little chaotic, like the spiky, erratic line on the right, that is not chemistry. That is literally just the loop trying to close itself again.
Remember those 3 silhouettes from the start of our explainer? Different name, different face, same ending. They weren't 3 different people. They were the exact same loop wearing 3 different masks. But look really closely now. We've erased the red line that connected them. There's a totally new figure, and for the very first time, they are standing clearly outside of the loop. The next one doesn't have to wear the same mask, not because you'll magically get lucky, but because now you know exactly what to look for.
And this brings us to a really profound realization to wrap up our visual journey today. See that single break in the circle? The closed loop has finally turned into a spiral that leads right off the edge of the page. If you just recognize yourself somewhere in this explainer, that is absolutely not a bad thing. In fact, that is the very first step. It is the exact moment the loop stops running on its own. I'm going to leave you with this final provocative thought. The loop only repeats when it runs in the dark. The moment you shine a light on it, the moment you can see the patterns of your own life and call them out by name, it completely loses its power to control your choices. So the next time you feel that intense, familiar spark, pause and ask yourself what you're really recognizing. Thanks so much for learning with me today on The Explainer.